Go. Okay, your composition book. You do not start taking notes on the first page. And here's the reason why. Because you need a table of contents, and you're going to use this table of contents, and I am going to use your table of contents every test day when I check your notes. Because what I'm going to do is I'm going to open your table of contents. I'm going to identify the chapter that we're in. I'm going to look at the page numbers that it covers, and I'm going to go flip there in your book, and I'm going to be able to access the notes. Does that make sense? So how do we get this going? Okay, table of contents. What does it do? Keeps it organized and tells you where to look for different information. True? In a book. Is this a book? Sure, we can call it a book, right? And I just threw the book on the ground. Okay. Okay. I need you guys to write table of contents at the top. I drew lines and all that sort of stuff because I had a graph one. You guys might have a line one. Just do table of contents at the top. I do want you guys to identify the chapters with a quick little indent and identify the section number and the title. There are always a few kiddos that try to get away with just doing section numbers, and I just keep on taking off points, which is very sad. Because what's the point of having a section number if you don't know what it's about? And then over on the right-hand side is the column for page numbers. This makes sense, right? Like the front of the book? Sure, I'll take it. It's going to be your responsibility to update the table of contents as you go through and as you take notes. It might be a daily thing, although we sometimes take a few days to cover a section, so maybe not daily. It may be a night before the test. You really hope you don't forget. When you have to run in here for class and you're stressed about a test, and I suddenly say pass your notebooks forward, you don't think about it, and then you didn't update table of contents. That's not exactly what I would advise, but you could do it. What's the dilemma with page 1? What if I was to tell you right now, turn to page 1 and start taking notes? Where's page 1? Okay. There's a lot of sections this year. So skip the whole first page, skip the whole second page, and if you're going to do any spacing, skipping lines, writing big, any of that, just go ahead and skip page 3. If you're like, nope, I'm going to make it as tiny and as small as possible, then only 2 pages should suffice. Skip the whole first one, skip the whole second one, depending on how you decide to do things. If you're skipping lines between chapters, if you're writing big and, or you have wide little papers, at least skip 3. Otherwise, you can put a 1 on the bottom right-hand corner, you can put a 1 in the middle, you can put a 1 on the upper right-hand corner, but no 1s over on this side. A few kids have done that, and it's awful when I'm trying to find page numbers. So, either bottom right, bottom middle, or top right, I don't really care. Choose a way that you are going to number. That's page 1. Now, just a few of you, I had this classmate in college who, he actually was the one that got me going on composition books because he had like this whole little set of really cool, you guys know the felt tip pens, like the really fine ones, really nice ones. He would get out his pens, I probably back. Anyway, I pulled it up. He would get out his pens and he'd get out his composition book, and he only wrote on the front page of every single one of his notebooks, and he, like, it was all color coded, it was crazy, but it was really cool. Because he and his wife he got married young. He and his wife had us over to their house once, and he had all of his math notes in like perfect order. I'm like, that's genius, because mine was in like 5 subject notebooks, and I had to like tear the notebook paper out and put it in a binder, and even then it was falling apart. And making your life better and easier, because this is so much more organized and neat, and you can actually refer back to things that you learned. So, if you are one of those people that you're like, I want to try the only one side of every paper, then you are allowed to do 1 there and 2 here. But if you're like a normal high school student, you're going to use the front and back, it's pencil anyway, who cares? You can do 1, and then 2, and then 3, and then 4. If you're like, I'm just going to number the odds. 1, 3, 5, 7. Nope, I'm not going to count it. I'm going to number every 5 pages. Nope, I've seen it all. Just number it. 1, 2, 3, 4. Many of you, 30 seconds is as many page numbers as possible. And then you can say you're doing homework while you're watching something and doing page numbers and get on top of it. Of course, as soon as you finish your page numbers, you just stop a little. But please, as much as is possible, have it on the outer corner of the pages. It is so much easier to access. If for any reason you don't have your composition book today, it's not a huge deal, except you need to set it up exactly the way I see it. Does that make sense? And now this is the composition book. other notebook did I ask you guys to get?
Spiral.
What's the spiral? Homework. The spiral's for homework. We're going to do something similar, but not quite as intense because I don't know, most of us will refer to our notes way more than we'll refer to our homework, right? Now, homework is super crucial, super important because it is our practice, right? And those coaches, those teams wouldn't dream of going to a game if they've never had practice. Not all of you have your spirals, and that's totally okay. We're not actually writing in them today. However, I do want to quickly just show you your spirals. I do need pause page numbers for right now done. Okay. On your spiral, I do need a name somewhere, just like with your composition book. It can be in Sharpie, it can be on the front cover, it can be on the inside cover. Just be careful putting it on like a page, because you guys know pages rip out, right? Especially the spirals. So please get your name on it. You don't even necessarily need to do the period or the subject. Probably to make you guys a little bit better. It doesn't matter. We'll figure it out with TAS. But with your spiral, I do want you guys to go ahead and on the very first page, if you have it, you can do this. If not, it's okay. Just the very first page, all you need is this one side. Go ahead and make a table of contents for him. And you're just going to do chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3. Does that make sense? So you can go ahead and do chapter 1. You don't have to do the sections. I don't care that much because you guys are going to be doing the sections in order. I do want you, though, to go ahead and be able to put chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3 with the corresponding page numbers. So go ahead and number your homework as well. Remember, we're not trying it out. This is going to be organized. It's going to be neat. It's going to stay all together, hopefully, except for maybe that random page that tears out every now and then. So once again, we're not doing, you don't have to identify or write down the sections, but I do want you to do chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3, chapter 4, etc. And speaking of chapter 1, do you guys realize I didn't put a title? That's lame. What's chapter 1 all about? Functions and their graphs. I don't know why I never put that. Functions and their graphs. Close the engine. Hey, functions. Just kidding. Alright, okay. I'm not going to necessarily, well, I won't say that. Table of contents in your spiral. All you have to do is just do the chapters, and that's merely for the purpose of if we ever refer back to something or if you want to study something. It just makes it way easier for you to be able to. And for my TAs and myself, when we go to grade your homework notebooks, we can say, what chapter are we in? Chapter 6? Cool. What page does it start on? Sweet. And we can grade it from there. Does that make sense? Just makes it nice and your homework, once again, you can work on the front and the back. There are 2 guidelines I have for notes and homework, though. Every new homework assignment and every new section of notes start on a new side of paper. Does that make sense? I want you to start at the top of the next page. So wherever you end off on any section, on any homework assignment, once you end it, you're not writing anything else beyond it on that page. Does that make sense? So section 1.1, if you only use half a page of notes, cool. You're flipping it and you're starting section 1.2 at the top. Same thing with the important. That just makes it way easier for us logistically because some of you guys, if you tried to put it all together, it's hard to figure out. So it's nice for you, it's nice for us for grading.
So, with this spiral methods, do we also skip 3 pages?
No, I think just the one, because you're only doing chapters, not sections, so it's just chapter 1 starts on page, chapter 2 starts on page. That's it. And then you're just going to put all the sections in chapter 1. Thanks for asking me that. Any other questions that you guys have? Please, you should say Toby.
Kobe.
No, Toby's fine too. Wait, I know. Colby's right here, right?
Yes.
And then Abby.
Yeah.
And then, does anyone sit there? No, it's okay. It's not your fault. I did point very close. Thanks. Alright, cool. Thanks. Let's get into the book. Before we start the notes, chapter 1 is huge. It's 10 sections. There's a lot of review in it. I would almost say it's equivalent to 3, maybe 4 chapters in Algebra 1. I don't know if I'd say 3 or 4 in Algebra 2. We go ahead and split it in half, so we do 1-1 to 1-5, and we have a test, and then 1-5 to 1-10, we have a test. Reason being, it's just a lot to fit in, and a lot for you to review and remember all of it. Not that you couldn't, it would be a lot. With honors, depending, we might go ahead and not make the one after section 5 a full test. We might just make it more of a quiz. The test will be cumulative at the end, but we do have to split this puppy up because there's a lot going on. The nice thing is, though, it starts easy. You guys ready? As you look at my notes, I do what's called a Cornell note system in the sense of I go ahead and have a main dividing bar going straight down, and I have the main topics on the left, kind of like what's going to be defined or what's going to be described or what's going to be practiced, etc. And then I have all the information on the inside. I do have the section number in the corner, and I have the title on the right. I do need you guys to at least somewhat follow the system just for grading purposes. I do need the section number and title at the top of the page. It's up to you whether or not you want to actually draw the Cornell note line. And you could just use, if you have notebook paper, or you guys know what I mean, like the normal college rule line rule. You can use the guidelines that are already there, and that's totally fine. You have the section title be on this side of the pink, red line, whatever color you want to call it. The title be on the other side. You can use the pink line that goes down to be that divider. That's okay. Graph paper is super nice to line up stuff, right? So you could go ahead and just kind of have so many blank spots are going to be your column, and then as long as it's spaced evenly, you don't have to draw the line every day. Some people actually have rulers and make it. It's up to you guys what you want to do with your notes. I'm not going to really grade that hard, but I do need the information that's here down there. Okay? And last but not least, there are just a few of you that are like, shh, I don't need notes. So you write down like 3 things when I've written down like 50. I need to see, if I wrote down like 50 things, I need to see at least like 47. Does that make sense? I need you to get the notes. I need you to get the examples. Every now and then there might be something you're like, you gotta be kidding me. I'm totally fine on that. In section 1-1, there's probably going to be quite a few of those. Just because it does start super easy and then it gets really in-depth as you go to section 2 and 3 and beyond. But please, please, please get down as much as possible just because I'm doing the examples for a purpose. Are we tracking? All right, let's go. Cartesian plane, everything XY coordinate axis. There's tons of stuff labeled. You don't obviously need to write the word quadrant, but please get the Roman numerals down. Origin, you guys know, is the center point. However, this is only for Cartesian planes, only for rectangular coordinates. And in your calculator, this would correspond technically to, I'm going to put it right down here, function mode. Just because we did do some stuff in our graphing calculator last week, right? If you were to go to mode, and if you were to see FUNC, function mode, it's going to do all of its graphing in the Cartesian plane with rectangular coordinates. And we haven't even gotten to equations yet. You guys know the x-axis is a horizontal number line. The y-axis is the vertical number line. I'm not specifically talking about lines right now, but the tick marks on the x-axis are vertical. The same way that x equals a constant will always be a vertical line. The tick marks on the y-axis are horizontal, the same way that y equals a constant is always going to be a horizontal line. Just a few of you need a couple of reminders about what it means to be horizontal, what it means to be vertical. But otherwise, I want you guys to go ahead and don't actually plot the points, I want you to visualize. Most of you haven't gotten down to plotting the points anyway, and that's okay. There's a lot of writing. Yes, you can abbreviate. Yes, you can shorten. So I want you guys just to visualize what quadrant would the point -1, 2 be in, what quadrant would 3, 4 be in, what quadrant would 0, 0 be in, what quadrant would 3, 0 be in, or how would you describe it? And what quadrant would -2, -3 be? there are solid facts in pre-cal, but there are also ideas that we're going to dig deeper into and further apply. Bless you. And so just because some examples only have numbers doesn't mean we don't want to still try to make it abstract a little bit. So what do you guys got? -1, 2, what quadrant? 2, good. And if I was to ask you why, how would you defend that? Without just showing the point and saying, well, look, there it is. How would you defend that point being in the second quadrant?
Where x is negative and y is positive.
The x is negative, the y is positive. When x is negative, you move to the left. When y is positive, you move up. So yes, you would be in quadrant 2. How about the point 3, 4? And the reason being?
Both are positive.
X and y are both positive. Good. So moving to the right and the right point. How about 0, 0?
Origin.
At the origin. Good. Not a quadrant. Instead, the description would be it is the point at the origin. What quadrant is 3, 0?
X-axis.
Almost. I agree. It is on the x-axis. But to distinguish exactly what part of the graph it's in, I was looking for one more qualifier. How would you describe that side of the x-axis? The positive x-axis. Does that make sense? 3, 0 would be right here, right? It is on the x-axis, but it's on the positive x-axis, on the positive side. You're specifically telling me the location. So, positive, I'm running over, x-axis. Getting our points down, we do have the point -1, 2. Technically, if my point was oriented. Sorry, my board was oriented. Should I make it big? Then you can't tell. Then we have the point 0, 0. We have the point 3, 4. Technically up here. Roughly, maybe a little bit lower. And the point 3, 0. Okay, what quadrant is -2, -3? How come?
Both negative.
Both are negative. So I'm going to move to the left and down. If there's ever a time that I give you a graph and have you graph something and it doesn't appear to be on the graph, like right here I have 3, 4 and it wasn't specifically on, don't automatically assume that you're wrong. Take a second, double check, make sure, but then go ahead and as best you can approximate. Does that make sense? Just in general. Just because I don't give you maybe the perfect place for your answer does not mean that your answer is wrong. Okay. You guys good on this page? Review stuff, yeah? That didn't work. Let me try it differently. Pythagorean theorem. I know, I told you it was review. What's the formula you've known ever since geometry? Maybe algebra 1. A squared. Okay, now explain it to me. How do I illustrate that with a figure? Yeah.
The two smaller sides squared would add up to the hypotenuse squared every time.
Okay, I like that. The two smaller sides squared will add up to the hypotenuse squared. So by your description, C must be the hypotenuse, right?
Yep.
Hypotenuse being the side opposite a right angle in a right triangle. True. Also known as the longest side of a right triangle. And so Ryan's description was good, and I said the two shorter sides. Because in comparison to the hypotenuse, they have to be shorter. Question, does it matter what I label A or B? No. Now, if we were in geometry, I might illustrate this formula to you. Try to have you interact with it, with a square and cutouts, but we're not in geometry, so. You guys have seen it, you've worked with it. A squared plus B squared is C squared. Another way of saying it is leg squared. Usually we call those shorter sides of a right triangle the legs. Leg squared plus leg squared. The sum of the squares of the two legs is the hypotenuse squared. Alright, so that's pretty straightforward. My question to you is, how do we use the Pythagorean theorem to identify the distance formula? No, I don't just want to hear the distance formula. I want to hear where it comes from. ideas. Trying to apply the Pythagorean theorem to the question, how do you find the distance between 2 points? I could guide you there. I could ask you really easy questions and probably get you to the answer. I'm going to give you guys 30 more seconds. See if you can figure it out first. Or give me a step in the right direction. Let's step in. Let's put the Pythagorean. Oh, Thomas, what do you got?
If you have another tool, you can use the two bottom of the legs to find the distance of the line.
Ah, that's exactly what I was going to ask. I was going to ask, where's the triangle, right? But Thomas just said use the 2 legs. What 2 legs? So Thomas, in your mind, when you say use the 2 legs, what would you be calling this right now? The hypotenuse. Okay. So we're going to call D, well, let's do it in red. I'm basically working out a problem right now. Red's usually my working out color. Distance is the hypotenuse. Okay, so up above, I knew that hypotenuse squared is leg squared plus leg squared. So in this case, I could say D squared is equal to, now, Thomas, can you go a little further? How can you get a leg?
Possible point that would have the, you could make the find the intersection point between the horizontal line and the vertical line.
Okay, so he's thinking, what if, I'm guessing, you were to think of a horizontal line going through the bottom point. Imagine that was actually straight. It rarely ever is. I apologize. And then vertical line,
Yeah.
using the y of the other point. The intersection point would make a, the thing is, you forever supposed to trust the picture in geometry, right? So it's rough. But do you guys see a right triangle now? And you see legs now. Hopefully the answer is yes. The dilemma is, I don't just want a squared plus b squared, because you guys know the distance formula doesn't have an a and b in it. So how could we express, if we were to label each of these points as x, let's not name him x1. Just for sake of purposes, like simplicity, let's name him x2. Thank you, sir. You guys know when I name it x2, y2, it's just a subscript, it's just for identifying the x, right? Doesn't mean anything mathematically as far as squaring or square rooting or any of that jazz. So bring a few variables just to kind of give us some information. But how could I mathematically write an expression that would describe the distance or the measurement of this leg for any 2 points, x2, y2, and x1, y1? What would give me the bottom leg? Maybe not so easy after all. So let's remember the distance formula. Think about the distance formula. Think about what piece might get me that measurement. Thomas is stealing it. Keep going.
Where's the x value? That would be the length.
The x value of this point?
Yeah.
What length would that be? That is x2, you're right.
That the value between the intersection point and the
No. But close. That does represent a horizontal distance, but is it that horizontal distance? What horizontal distance is it? It's getting hard, we're getting down to the basics and why they are what they are. Whenever you have an x value, it stands for the distance between this x and Jack, what do you say?
It would be x2 and
is what we want. Because x2 measures from the origin. Does that make sense? Whenever you have a place on a number line, doesn't that denote a distance from 0? And negative, but still a distance from 0. Remember, absolute value is the distance. Maybe you don't remember the definition of absolute value. But absolute value is the distance from a number to the 0. Negative just says it's on the left. Positive says it's on the right. So yeah, good job, Jack. I need x2 and x1. And once again, good job, Thomas, because you guys were working off each other. So, if I think about x1 point, which would be this distance from the origin here, x2 is from the origin here, I just need to go ahead and subtract. So this distance is going to be x2 minus x1. I'm not going to put those parentheses in because sadly it looks like an ordered pair that's not meant to be. Just for sake of illustration, put it up so it's a little bit further. Now, maybe things just got a little bit easier because I was just asking for the horizontal distance and it took us a long time to figure that one out. But what do you guys think is going to go on when I look for the vertical distance? Which way? Technically, looking at the picture and looking at the orientation, it makes sense why you would say y1 minus y2. And technically, you're not going to be wrong when you say y1 minus y2. But some of you realize that is not the way that we state the formula. What way is the formula technically go? What would be the dilemma in this picture as to why your brain's not going to like me writing y2 minus y1 as this vertical distance? Because y2 is the lower one. So if you do y2, which would be this value right here, minus y1, what kind of number are you going to get?
Negative.
Ah, it's going to ruin everything. What is it? What's the Pythagorean theorem? Okay. So I'm going to say d squared is equal to x2 minus x1 quantity squared plus y2 minus y1 quantity squared. Question: why does the negative not go to prime? It's squared. So it doesn't truly make a difference as far as whether or not the subtraction, the way that you go in the distance formula. I don't like the way I chose to do that, but it's not working, so I'll just leave it. Doesn't truly make a difference as to whether the y2 is bigger or smaller than the y1. And you guys have done problems where the y2 has been smaller than the y1, so the subtraction, when you do this, is a negative number. You just haven't thought about what it looks like in the picture, so it's never confused you before. Or maybe it has if you just always stay negatives. But this is one variation of the distance formula in calculus. This is kind of actually the one that we talk about. But what's the one that you guys are more used to seeing? Ooh, you're thinking of the formula for slope. No, not quite. Not x2 minus x1. That would be y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. But that does involve 2 points. You're totally right on that. No one remembers distance formula, the form you guys have memorized? No, not nx plus b. You're thinking that's another important formula. Yeah. Usually they square root both sides. Now there is one little mathematical thing that might kind of confuse you with the square root if you're thinking deeply. And that is, if we were to square root both sides, technically, what else should we incorporate? Plus or minus. So where's the plus or minus? Distance on its own is defined to be always positive, so it doesn't matter. Does that make sense? And it's not that it doesn't matter. Mathematically, you would do plus or minus square root, but then you would put it in context and say, distance is always positive, okay. So I'm only taking the positive square root. Now, is this necessarily enough to make it so that you never forget the distance formula ever again? Well, that's wishful thinking. But could it possibly have at least gotten the idea of the distance formula a bit more solid in your mind? I hope so. Because when we first turned to this page, You probably just thought that I was doing more random review topics, which I kind of am, in context of the book. But was there a reason I had Pythagorean theorem, which is a super easy formula right before the distance formula? Oh yeah. Ready, set, go find me a distance, go. If your brain works more visually, you can actually draw a picture. Graph one point, graph the other, connect it, make a little right triangle. Or you could just plug and shove to the formula. They're saying it. This is the one you can do. Just do it different. Just by looking at the graph, I can tell that the bottom leg is going to end up being 5. The horizontal leg, the vertical leg, is going to end up being 3. My orientation was a little funky. That's kind of sad. Struggles of technology sometimes. So maybe like when she's oriented like 5 times in class, they're just losing it about 2 seconds later. 5 is one leg. 3 is the other, so therefore, taking Pythagorean theorem, I can say distance is equal to the square root of 5 squared plus 3 squared. And there's no perfect square in 34. Now, if you just plugged into the formula, should you have gotten the exact same thing? Yes. 25 and 9? 34, right? Because if you had plugged into the formula, you would have just, some of you actually might still do this from Algebra 1. Label it, that's x1, y1, this is x2, y2. Either way, you would have had 3 minus a negative 2. Some of you would have just changed that to positive. And 4 minus 1. You would have had some more math to work out. You would have gotten to the exact same things. Does that make sense? So, Pythagorean theorem is a much easier formula than the distance formula. Maybe if your brain resonates with the right triangle better, and it doesn't memorize these types of formulas very well, you might just want to go ahead and utilize that. Oh man, there must be so much left to this section. Nope, 1 page. Midpoint formula. I'm not going to show you all the geometry to this necessarily and all the behind the scenes because we spent a lot of time on the distance formula, but I will quickly remind you that when you do have some sort of line with an x1 and a y1, an x2 and a y2, but what I want you to think for the midpoint, which is the point that is halfway between each of those, I want you to think of average. How do you average 2 quantities, guys? You add them together, you divide by how many there are. The midpoint formula is just the average of the 2 points. The average of the x's and the average of the y's. The average of the x's, the average of the y's. Add the 2 x's, divide by 2, add the 2 y's, divide by 2. We could technically put these into little right triangles too. And talk about this guy and talk about that guy, but you can't dig deep into everything or else everything will take forever. And the nice thing about addition is that it's commutative, so does it really matter which one you put first, which one you put second, if you're just adding them? No. So my midpoint is going to end up being, yes, after the bell rings, Caroline, I have a note for you. It's for the end clause. Simplifying that. Anybody do it yet? Isn't it 2 and 0?
Yep.
Got it. Dun, 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 dun. Homework number 1, due tomorrow. Look in your class shared folder. It's not super crazy big. But it will make you go find where homework is found. I'm going to go ahead and run back to my desk and I'm going to get it uploaded. Alright, okay.
Just bring it every day to class.
I see a book that is not covered. I had a little bit of grace right this second, but it needs to be covered by tomorrow. Because that's everything grace and stop. Tomorrow is the deadline. Deadline.
It's open now.
I don't think it.
You know what kind of fantasy?
No. It's open.
Yeah, but
But she was a little
Hey, I
bit.
see.
you don't want to
Happy Monday.
I did the stuff.